So this is the Razer Blade 16 for 2024. It's hella fast and hella expensive, but what makes a Blade 16 is its incredible build quality packaged in a stealthy matte black design offering really good performance. Now for starters, this thing starts at $3,000, which gets you a Core i9 4900HX CPU with 16 GB of RAM, 1TB SSD and RTX 4070, paired with a beautiful Quad HD Plus 240Hz OLED display. I'll talk about that shortly. The 4080 jumps up to an insane $3,600, which gets you twice the memory and storage. And finally, we have the RTX 4090 spec that I have over here, which will set you back $4,200 US. Look, it's not like we expected these laptops to be cheaper this year anyways. The Blade family has always been known to be expensive jewelry for gamers who want a MacBook version of a Windows laptop. Now, I'm going to keep this review fairly short because there isn't a whole lot to talk about this new Blade 16. I mean, from the outside, you're still getting the same matte black anodized aluminum chassis that's still a huge fingerprint magnet, and it looks abysmal when you're handling it, especially during warmer summer days here in Canada. The build quality, as always, has been Razer's forte. The CNC milled aluminum chassis, it feels top tier compared to everything else that's currently on the market right now. If you are looking for a gaming laptop with a robust hinge mechanism that barely wobbles and something that's closer to Apple's offerings, this is it. That being said, it's not the thinnest 16-inch gaming laptop you'll find. I remember the Blade 15 from back in the day. It used to be 0.67 inches or 17 millimeters. The 16, it's 0.2 inches thicker, and it's also heavier as well. So Razer has definitely lost the battle for being the thinnest 16-inch gaming laptop in the market. I feel like Asus and Legion are sort of taking the lead when it comes to providing thinner gaming laptops with the Zephyrus G16 and the Legion 7i because they are definitely thinner than the Blade 16. But you also have to remember that Razer has crammed a much powerful CPU and GPU inside this chassis to get more performance compared to those laptops that I mentioned earlier. So yeah, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds, which is portability and performance. You also get the same compact 331 GaN power adapter with the thick and extremely difficult to manage braided cables. I feel like the power connectors could use a refresh. Now, the interior space hasn't changed all that much. You still get the same layout as the previous generation. I mean, I love the sleek and minimal look of this keyboard, but these switches, I mean, they could use some work, guys. There isn't a whole lot of key travel to work with, so if you are a hardcore typist, you might want to look into the other laptops that I mentioned earlier, like stuff from Legion, ROG. Those laptops have really good keyboards, and they're pretty solid. Chroma lighting on this laptop is gorgeous, and that's a given considering Razer's dominance in the RGB space. This massive trackpad is super smooth. It's a precision glass surface, so navigating with Windows is a breeze. It's probably one of the best trackpads that you can find for a Windows laptop, but you knew that. The port setup also remains the same again. On the left-hand side, you get power in, two USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A ports, a 3.2 Gen 2 Type C port with 100-watt PD charging support, and an audio jack. If you switch over to the right, there is a Kensington lock, HDMI 2.1, another Type A port, and a Thunderbolt 4 Type C port. And you also get a full-size UHS 2 card reader, which if you're a creator, you're gonna love because it's a really fast one. So I was quickly able to transfer my raw 4K footage and photos from my FX3 to the Blade and start editing in Lightroom and Resolve. Now, I've got to say, I have to give credit to Razer for keeping up to date with their ports design. So if you look at the Type A ports, for instance, they're Gen 2 10 gigabits per second and not 5 gigabits per second, because I'm still pretty vocal about making sure that laptop manufacturers implement the fastest I/O for future-proofing, and it seems like Razer is definitely listening to that, and I know a lot of other manufacturers are just not caring about implementing the fastest I/O, so yeah, something that I wanted to mention. So Razer, good stuff. Now this is what the front-facing webcam looks like. It's very similar in both visuals and audio quality compared to the previous generation. You also get the really nice physical privacy shutter switch tucked away right closer to the webcam, so that's neat as well. The front-facing speakers sound, again, very similar. Nothing really has improved in that aspect. I will take this setup over anything that's just bottom-facing, so these actually do sound pretty good. I will say that you need to disable THX spatial audio through the driver software to get a much better audio experience, because for some reason, they've enabled it and it just sounds really bad, even when you have headphones plugged in. So highly recommend you go into the software, disabling THX spatial audio stuff, and then moving on. There is one slight change to the Blade 16 this year, but before we get to that, a quick word from today's video sponsor. To achieve perfection, sometimes you have to change the game. That means finding something that embodies modern design with a refined, minimalistic aesthetic that can easily be adapted to reflect your environment. Sculpted with precision-crafted weights for enhanced stability and style, whether you seek the perfect typing rhythm, a unique tactile feel, or unobstructed functionality, Drop's CST M80 is a TKL marvel that's sleek and bold, designed to dominate your workspace. Check it out down below. Now, if there's one thing that has changed with the Blade 16, it's in the display department. So last year, Razer offered a stunning 16-inch 16x10 Quad HD Plus IPS panel with a 240Hz refresh rate. This year, they've switched to OLED, bringing a few cool features to the table. So the first is those punchy blacks with the vivid colors. I mean, the contrast ratios are just far superior to an LCD panel. The color gamut is roughly the same, but you're still maintaining that buttery smooth 240Hz refresh rate. So if you're a creator, or more specifically a gamer, this is like the GOAT of gaming displays for a laptop. And when you pair that with the ultra-fast 0.2 millisecond response time, it's just a beautiful combination that you really have to see in person to appreciate. Now, you still have the option to dynamically switch between 120Hz and 240Hz to preserve a battery. But the only downside, and this is something that you'd expect with switching to an OLED panel, is the noticeable reduction in peak SDR brightness performance. So this one's almost 100 nits dimmer than last year's Blade 16. Now, Razer is still offering that unique mini LED display option that can switch natively between UHD Plus and Full HD Plus if you're looking for better brightness output. But keep in mind that that's going to cost you a lot of money. Upgradability is pretty straightforward. You still have access to 2 RAM modules. The maximum supported memory is 96 gigabytes, and Razer does offer that option on their website. You also have 2 M.2 slots layered on top of each other. The primary NVMe SSD is hidden underneath this bracket, and the drive speeds are roughly the same compared to last gen. All right, let's talk about performance. And I'm gonna level with you guys here, okay? 2024 laptops won't offer significant performance gains over the 2023 models. And the reason is pretty evident. NVIDIA hasn't released new GPUs for laptops in over a year, and it's nearing 2 years for the desktop market. Essentially, manufacturers are pairing the same GPU with a slightly updated CPU and packaging it with some AI features to market it as a new laptop. So in Razer's case, you have Intel's refreshed Raptor Lake Core i9-14900HX CPU and an RTX 4090, which isn't that different from last year's Blade 16 with the Core i9-3950HX and the same GPU. In fact, both of them are running at the same power levels, the same noise levels. They both come with the same 3 power modes. So I thought it would be interesting to put last year's Blade into our charts to give you guys an idea of how this new one performs in comparison. And what do you know? That 13th gen CPU is still holding its fort, even against this year's Blade 16. We've tested both balanced and boost modes on both models, and the multi-core performance remains quite similar, if not faster, on last year's Blade 16. Single-core performance does lean in favor of the newer Raptor Lake refresh CPUs thanks to the slightly higher clock speeds, but it doesn't make a difference because when we examine the rest of the results, last year's Blade 16 is starting to look like a bargain. Don't get me wrong, these are fast laptops, and if you need access to performance at this level, the Legion 7i is also a worthy alternative. We were actually quite puzzled by the underwhelming performance of this year's Blade 16 in balance mode. Now, it could be an optimization issue, but it is worth noting that last year's Blade 16 remains one of our fastest gaming laptops to this date, even when it comes to demanding tasks like video editing in Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve Studio. It just exceeds. The only noticeable improvement you'll see is in battery life. And when I say notable, it's very minor. Now, I should point out that the real improvements that you're going to be seeing in 2024 gaming laptops are the ones that come equipped with the newer Meteor Lake processors, like the G16. However, when you push the limits of these refreshed Raptor Lake processors, the battery life remains almost the same compared to last gen. So you still need to keep the power adapter in your proximity when traveling with this laptop. Now, when we look at gaming performance, well, again, guys, I hate to say it, but this year's Blade 16 doesn't offer any significant improvements over the previous generation. In fact, we're seeing the same trend with the older model outperforming the newer one. And you know what? It's not really Razer's fault, because the minimum performance gains from the 13th gen CPU to the 14th gen CPU, and when you're also pairing that with the same GPU with identical power levels, the overall performance is virtually unchanged. You're basically looking at the same thing. Honestly, I can't recommend spending $4,200 on this laptop. It just doesn't offer enough value for the price. And that's basically my conclusion for the Razer Blade 16. I think you should completely skip this laptop. In fact, you might probably get more out of last year's Blade 16 that's currently discounted for almost $1,000 with an RTX 4090, and I hear from the grapevines that on Prime Day, Razer is expected to provide massive discounts for the older model as well, so you might actually find a really good bargain with the previous generation Blade 16 gaming laptop. And this doesn't just apply to Razer laptops, you know, it's pretty much every other manufacturer. The performance improvements haven't been that significant from last year, guys. It's just a fact. I mean, sure, you might get a few quality of life improvements with the display and maybe a few design changes here and there, but in reality, it's just basically the same. So yeah, that's my review of the 2024 Razer Blade 16. Skip it, save that money, put it towards the older generation Blade 16 if you are looking to get really good performance in a premium form factor, and pretty sure you'll be happy with that. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.